You don't have makeup for me?
No, but I want you to look great without.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Can we get a little?
This town has no sense of humor.
Look people in the eyes, tell them the truth. The American people aren't stupid.
Question, because tax reform is the holy grail. Well, it's not literally the holy grail. Maybe I shouldn't say that now, but I've said everybody.
So, how does it feel being back in DC?
The swamp?
Yeah, swamp.
The swamp is geographically Washington, D.C., but in a metaphysical sense, it's just a place where values change.
I'm not a career politician, and I don't want to be a career politician. And I think one of the problems in this town, in the swamp, is there's too many damn career politicians.
I think we have a bipartisan bankruptcy going on. I think both parties are engaged in a quiet deal that we will support our base, and if it leads to bankruptcy, okay, and you will support your base, and if it leads to bankruptcy, okay. Because both parties are more interested in supporting their special interest groups and looking the other way when the other party supports their special interest groups.
Democrats had plenty of notice. Chairman Hatch can attest that all
There's a good 3-day view. We generally go from about 7 in the morning till about 9 at night. You know, I joke that I don't think I've ever worked so hard to accomplish so little. But if you stop working, you can be assured you won't accomplish anything. If I'm up by 7 and I'm not done working until 9 on a day we're in DC. And if I'm on the road, generally speaking, if we're in recess, I'm usually up earlier and home later. I've been married for a year and a half. I haven't been on a honeymoon yet. Don't have time, can't afford it. Am I complaining? Hell no. I've been given a wonderful opportunity to perpetuate the greatest experiment that mankind has ever endeavored to engage in. But the workload is, it's not. This isn't all vacations and steak dinners, I promise.
I was whipped on the first budget, which means that leadership comes up to you and asks you how are you going to vote on this. And he said, Ken, are you going to vote for the budget? And I said, no, I'm not going to vote for the budget. And he says, well, why aren't you going to vote for the budget? And I said, well, because it doesn't balance. He says, well, it balances in 10 years. And I said, how long have you been here? And he says, I've been here 12 years. I said, 10 years ago, did they tell you it was going to balance? He looks at me and he says, you're right, it never balances. That's leadership. That's leadership's representative telling me it never balances.
Here the incentives are ass backwards, upside down. There's no incentive to save money here. In the private sector, I think the incentives for the most part, though not perfect, are very good. Here there's not an incentive to save money. There's an incentive to spend money. There's not an incentive to do what you believe in necessarily or what you believe to be correct. There's an incentive to get to yes, to be on the team. Now, why do you want to be on the team while you're here? Well, because that's going to help you do what? Win re-election. It's going to help you run for governor. It's going to help you run for the United States Senate. It's going to help you be the next Speaker of the House. Those, to me, are not the correct incentives, because nowhere in what I just said are the words "the people." The incentives should be all about the people we represent. And more days than not, I think everybody is represented in Washington, D.C., other than we the people. first day. I'm a small business guy. I understand budgets. I got an MBA. I get numbers. We're sitting there discussing one of the line items in the budget. Sitting right to my right, it wasn't Ken. He raised his hand, and Chairman Price recognized him, and he said, Chairman, he looked up at the point of the clock. He said, we can't be here all day. He said, especially debating this line item. He said, it's only $7 billion. Can we move on? My first day here. I just did one of those things. I raised my hand. Price recognized me, and I said, "I'm new here. I don't understand Washington ways. I'm a freshman. It's my first day in the budget committee. I'm a small business guy, but where I come from, Iowa, we run our entire state budget is $7 billion in a year." I said, "That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money where we come from." And guess what we did? We moved on. We moved on.
So we both vote following our principles, what's best for the country, etc. And then you get a lot of this team language. You got to do what's right for the team or whatever. I said, well, I'm fine with being on a team, but tell me when the team practices, right? Where's the team meet?
The independence of the individual, I think, is largely requested to be sacrificed when you enter these hallowed halls. You'll do what the team needs you to do because the team's bigger than you. Conceptually, I get that, but I didn't run for Congress to serve another person in Congress. I ran for Congress to serve 730,000 people in Virginia's 5th District.
And the very people that talk about how awful this town is, send me back and I'll clean it up, they have no interest in cleaning this up because they benefit from the system.
Whatever percentage of people are here to perpetuate opportunity and freedom and the ability of individuals to make choices for themselves versus the number of people who are here to perpetuate their name, to be important or be B-list, C-list celebrities, or to have people call them sir or ma'am or madam or Mr. Congressman. It's all stupid.
Leader Pelosi and I.
And it's interesting dynamic in this town. As soon as you want something, they got you. As soon as you want something, you now become part of the swamp. You say, "Oh, I want a chairmanship." Okay, well then you got to play the game by the rules they want. If you say, "Well, I want to be on an A committee," now you got to play the game by the rules that they set. As soon as you want something that they have, they got you.
Well, Congress is one step closer to passing a $1.3 trillion federal spending bill.
Hey, boy. Fight bite me on camera, huh?
Yeah. There's a lot of animals in the Capitol.
And dogs, too. Some four-legged.
This has been a months-long process.
We burned the midnight oil and ended up with a bill that is really good for the American people.
Whoever designed this building did not like
People.
politics or people.
We're going there and we're standing here.
I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old.
Just like the Hotel California. Check in, you can never. All right, guys. This is our meeting. See you later.
I'm not worried about anyone calling me inhumane for not spending more money than we have today and forcing our grandchildren to bail us out in the future. I think the inhumane and irresponsible action is to continue to spend so much more money than we have. It's even more disturbing when the flow of information is from leadership to lobbyists and then to members.
Hey, how are you?
What happened with the omnibus?
Do we have enough time? So many things that are not right with the omnibus. First thing is the process. 2,232 pages, not that we're counting, were given to us, I think is around 8 o'clock at night. Basically gave 8 hours, 10 hours to read over 2,000 pages. That's the equivalent of 2 entire Bibles. Anyone that voted for the omnibus bill, that says they read the bill, is a flat out liar. Why would you be voting for something that you haven't read, or that your staff and yourself combined can't read in that amount of time? Most all the decisions around this place are made by a few people at the very top. So what we have with the omnibus is 2 of the Senate leaders, 2 House leaders get in a room, smoke-filled room, and they're going to figure out how we're going to spend $1.3 trillion without the input of any other congressional members or United States senators. Now that's not good representative government, wouldn't you say? I voted against the omnibus bill for a multitude of reasons. However, it contained $350,000 of tax money from hardworking Americans to study the sex life of Japanese quail. This is the kind of stuff that you get in an omnibus bill. They put some things in there that you like and a whole bunch of things in there that you don't like. If you had legislation to study the sex life of Japanese quail, standalone, I hope to God it wouldn't pass. But you put it in an omnibus bill and it passes.
So we pass an omnibus, members go home to their district and they are getting excoriated for passing a spending bill that large with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican White House. How do we tell people that it really isn't that bad, or that we're going to save money somehow? On a number of spending bills, I have read about provisions that affect my district before I ever heard anything from Republican leadership. They will talk to lobbyists and get something in the bill to help the lobbyists, and then the lobbyists will talk to the media, and I read about it, but I have no participation in what goes into a spending bill, and I'd venture to say that 95% of the members here don't know what's in the spending bill until we're supposed to vote on it, and even after we've voted on it, frankly. They put the balanced budget amendment on the calendar for the week that we get back from Easter recess. They don't hold any hearings on the balanced budget amendment. They don't have town halls and go on the radio and message on it. We're talking about a change to the Constitution. And they have a balanced budget amendment change to the Constitution that's just, people have read it for a few hours before they go vote on it without any input from the American public. It was a total farce.
What's wrong with the flippin' swamp is you got a bunch of people up there who are hell-bent on perpetuating their own power, their own name, their C-list celebrity status, their chairmanships, their leadership position, etc. And I take Mr. Trump at his word that he wants to drain the swamp and make Washington work better for Americans. The Read It Act would require that members have at least 2 minutes per page to review a bill prior to the bill coming to the vote on the full floor of the House, which sounds redundant because there's a 72-hour rule, but the 72-hour rule can be waived by a super subset, and frequently is, and we're trying to structure Read It in a way such that the entire House would have to vote to waive their right to review the bill, which would then create a circumstance wherein the voters knew who wasn't terribly concerned with actually diligently reviewing the bills.
Where's that swamp critter?
Hey, Ken, how you doing? I don't have any brownies. I'm sorry.
I'll bring some with me next time.
That's good.
When we pass the Republican rules at the beginning of this session, one of the rules is that we will not appropriate money to unauthorized programs. And of course, in this omnibus bill, we waived that rule so that we could appropriate money to unauthorized programs. And we do that every time. Whatever rule we pass at the beginning of a session can be waived before we violate it in any bill.
So I gave you a copy of the new text, and what this does, it incorporates the amendment that we had talked about earlier.
And the amendment is designed to keep them from being able to waive the rule.
And so I've talked to their legislative director, and she's made him aware that you'll be reaching out to him.
But she didn't give you any sort of read?
She didn't. I sent her the text and a good explanation. So.
And she didn't give you any hand tip.
I can ask her.
Oh, I would love to try to, peek behind the curtain, because what I'm afraid of is that we'll go, and we're obviously reaching across the aisle here, that we'll go in and we'll walk into somebody who, for whatever reason, isn't interested, and we will have wasted that one silver bullet, which is the unveiling. Right? This is not partisan.
Happens on both sides, for sure.
No shit. Leadership never wants us to vote against a rule, ever. And we were so against the omnibus that a group of us voted against the rule. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but Democrats, they always are going to vote against the rule. So then Republicans, of which there are 240, I believe, in our conference, 218 need to vote for a rule. So if you can get 30 Republicans to vote against the rule, you can stop the bill. At least send it back to the rule.
In theory.
In theory,
Whenever
correct.
the Democrats vote in large measure for a bill like this omnibus, Nancy Pelosi has members in her pocket, and she will just send them down to vote for the rule so that she knows the rule can pass. And they did in this case. They probably got 15 or 16 Dems to vote for the rule. There were enough Republicans vote against the rule, and you could see the Democrats just huddled around Nancy Pelosi, and she would just send the next one down to make sure that the rule passed. When it comes to bankrupting the country, they cooperate all the time.
Great point.
So I get a message from the whip's office. Missed you on the balanced budget amendment whip check. How do you plan to vote? And my response was, my back was seriously injured after the Omni passed. The weight of this country's debt has crushed my ability to stand tall and proud with my fellow Republicans. I am undecided on the BBA because I think it is a cynical attempt to pretend that House R's really care about our country's debt. We had no real hearings to explore different versions, and without marketing this effort to Americans, we will not get a 2/3 vote to realistically pass this BBA out of the House. So that was my feeling on both of the bills.
Did he respond?
No.
What do you think of the omnibus? What do you think of the omnibus? Well, there you go. There's your answer, Jack. Look at that. Anybody here for the omnibus? Come over to the trough. Come on over. You guys got sense. They're not that stupid. They got sense.
The committees here are ranked based on how much money you can raise if you're on that committee. An A committee, you should be able to raise, $500,000 easily every election cycle from the lobbyists if you're on an A committee. I'm on B and C committees, but they're important committees to my constituents. The Transportation Committee, right? Our roads and bridges should be pretty important, right? It turns out there aren't a whole lot of lobbyists here in Washington, D.C. interested in roads and bridges, though, and so it's a B committee. Veterans Affairs, that's a C committee. What if people back home knew that taking care of our veterans was considered the lowest priority committee in Congress?
Are you closer to God when you are in Colorado, or are you closer to God when you're in the swamp? God's up there. So when you're in Colorado, you're just a little closer to God. And so the legislation that comes out of this place is really, really bad.
This is my congressional pin, and you'll see a lot of people around here wearing them. I try not to wear it all the time. I call it precious.
I had to go to the restroom. Patrick came in there. I says, Patrick, come on, man, you know that bill doesn't do that. It doesn't deport anybody. It doesn't break up families. This is what he does. Politics.
She makes way more sense than half the people in Congress.
What are you looking at? What are you looking at?
Episode 3. I know we're going to get the word prostitute in there somehow, Razika.
Well, in September of 2012, John Boehner did a fundraiser for me. I got elected and took office in November. And by December of 2012, I had joined a coup to get rid of John Boehner. It didn't take me long, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after being sworn in, to see how messed up this place was. There's a way to order things, but what we have here is chaos.
Yeah, that chaos, you hate to think that's by design, but sometimes you think it is by design. Crisis management in government leads to $21 trillion in debt. Crisis management leads to poor policies. And when we had that 2,232 page come out, that bill for the omnibus on March 23rd, that not one person read, I've been on the record as saying if anybody voted for that bill, that's legislative malpractice, and they don't deserve to be here and have the trust of the American people.
Of course, I think that's all bullcrap. You shouldn't vote for an omnibus. You shouldn't vote for anything you haven't had time to read. I remember the first time I voted no and the party was voting yes, a staff member came to me on the floor and told me that I had made a mistake. And I said, well, actually, that's how I meant to vote. And she said, well, if you want to know what's in this bill, you can go over to the leadership table and they'll explain this bill to you. And I said, I read the bill, that's why I'm voting no. And she said, well, we're not whipping the vote tonight, so you can vote how you want on this one. This is a staffer. I'd been here like a week, and she's giving me permission to vote my conscience, to vote for my constituents. It was ridiculous, but that was just the tip of the iceberg.
The system is just broken.
Lobbyists have a legitimate function and a function that's not so legitimate. The side that is a little less desirable or a little slimier is the money side of politics and the lobbyist's role in the money side. One wise old sage said was the mother's milk of politics, and that is money. And you can't run for office without money, and so lobbyists provide part of that money.
We got introduced, I'm not going to mention any names, by somebody that was in charge of one of the congressional committees, the outside one, and they said, let's get down to it. You're here because of the help we've given you. Your job is to raise money, to give it to the Republican Party, and if you want a committee chairmanship, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. I was highly offended because I didn't come up here to play that game. I don't think you should have to pay to play. If you do what you're supposed to do, and you stand true to the values that you ran on, you'll get reelected by the people that sent you here.
Take care. Proud of you. A week after the election in November, there's an orientation week. All the new members are invited to DC, and there is reception after reception after reception. But it's all designed to introduce members to how DC works, introduce members to the fact that there is a good life. If you play ball with the lobbyists, if you play ball with the power structure in DC, there's a very good life that you can lead. If you don't play ball, there's a set of punishments, there's an ostracization. Whatever that word is, they will do their best to isolate you and make sure that they take you out and that other members are elected that can play ball or that will play ball with the lobbyists and the power structure.
I had a lobbyist in the medical device industry, and he said, Thomas, you're different from these other congressmen. You're smart, you know what you're doing, you understand technology, you're wasting your time on those B and C committees. You need to be on an A committee. In fact, you need to be on the Ways and Means Committee. And my lobbyist friends and I are prepared to raise the amount of money it's going to take to get you on the Ways and Means Committee. I wanted to run out of there. And when I did get out of the basement of the Capitol Hill Club after his proposal, I was trying to find a shower. I had to get the scum off. Just being part of that conversation felt dirty.
My assessment is $300,000. That's what I'm supposed to pay to rent my position on these 3 committees. And note, your assessment is subject to change based on leadership roles. In other words, if you get more power here, they're going to charge you more. And if you can't pay today, just sign this piece of paper pledging that you will make this payment in full before the due date. In fact, they'll fold this sucker up and stick it in your pocket on the floor of the House at votes, just to remind you that you owe some money if you want to keep your committee assignment. Now, renting committee assignments and chairmanships, it should be illegal. If you did this sort of thing in a city council meeting or a state legislature, they would perp walk you in handcuffs in front of the evening news. But it's legal here, because who's going to make a law stopping us? Even the Constitution says that the House and the Senate shall make their own rules. Over the years, I suppose my bill is about $1.2 million. I paid $6,000. That was the first month that I was here. I didn't know any better. Ostensibly, the money goes for a good cause. Look, it's to keep us in the majority. And the Democrats do the same thing. It's to take back the majority. The problem is the incentive structure is set up to get you to sell out to lobbyists because they're the only ones who have the currency you need, which is campaign dollars, to buy your committee assignment. It's a terrible choice. Why should you have to do this? You're faced with coming up here and prostituting yourself just so that you can get a committee assignment where you can represent your constituents the best.
I'm a capitalist, and I don't think there's anything wrong with corporations, businesses trying to make more money. I think it's what drives this country. I think it's produced more wealth in the United States and in the world. So capitalism is a good idea. When you use government to unfairly give your group or corporation or business an advantage over others that are out there that don't try to use that access either to fence out or to increase profits, that's bad. And oftentimes that's what lobbyists are involved in, is trying to use the system that we have to benefit themselves in an unfair way. And I was looking right in the camera. I was talking to the American people that time. They liked that.
Millions of people have died to make this country something better than it was, and now it's my responsibility if all goes to hell.
That's right. Let's go save a nation, Tom.
You can either quit or you can fight, and I'm not ready to quit. And with that, I will tell you that there is no way in heck that I'm not going to be back here in 2019.
These attacks aren't true, and I can prove that. With this in mind, not for fear of losing or for lack of love for our great nation, today I am announcing that I will not seek re-election.
Hey, brother.
Kentucky's finest.
If you don't make your payments over at the NRCC, you don't get your bills on the floor. But occasionally you come up with an idea that's so good they can't pass it up. So they bring it to the floor with their name on it, right? They just take yours off and put theirs on it.
That happened to you?
This happened this week to me and Walter Jones. We found out that the taxpayer pays for the speaker to have an office after he leaves Congress. And so we said, this is ridiculous if you're not even an elected official. So we introduced a bill, 2 Congresses in a row to get rid of this. Oh, stupid idea. Oh, we're not going to do this. Now Paul Ryan's running around taking credit for getting it done last week because they don't want us to get any credit back home because they're going to turn around and use their super PAC to come to our districts and say he can't get anything done. Well, after they've stolen our idea, yeah, it looks like we can't get anything done.
There are lots of other inducements and arm twisting that can be used to get you to go along with the swamp. For instance, if you play by the rules and you do what the speaker tells you on certain votes that are really important to the leadership, then you'll get a bill with your name on it.
I got to tell you, I had a bill that I introduced. The chairman didn't like the bill. I wanted to redraft the bill. The staff gave the bill to another member. Now, maybe at the chairman's direction, I don't know, but then they give me this lame excuse about some group didn't want me to run the bill. It was my bill. And they actually gave the bill to another member to run. Staff is incredibly powerful in this place. If you think about it, we're here 3 nights a week the most, and we're supposed to be back campaigning, and we're supposed to be raising money while we're here, and a lot of what they do here, I mean, why would we have 500 bills in the Senate when they're never going to get to those 500 bills? They keep us busy so that we're not running around gnawing on the furniture like a puppy dog. So if we're busy, the staff is getting the work done that leadership wants to get done, and all the members are just pushed to the side.
One of the things I've thought about that would really help this place is if the Speaker of the House weren't the fundraiser in chief. Literally, the Speaker of the House, whether that's a Democrat or a Republican these days, raises about $80 million and then redistributes it to the needy congressmen for re-election. So those congressmen
can't really escape the gravitational pull of the speaker once they've done that. And the speaker, who sets the agenda, now is encumbered with all of these ties to $80 million of money. If you could separate the speaker function from the fundraising function, that would go a long way.
There's different kinds of leadership. There's a speaker, majority leader, whip, conference chair, and NRCC chair. 3, the speaker, leader, and whip are in closed-door meetings making decisions. The conference chair and NRCC chair are rarely included. There's really a group of 3 that makes most of the decisions, and that's typically leadership.
I didn't make my payments at the NRCC. I didn't vote for John Boehner to be speaker. I voted no on some of these spending bills. And within 3 months, the chairman of the science committee, now I love him, but he came to me and he said,
he's a good man.
We're going to dissolve your committee and we're going to merge it into another committee. So they did, that was smart. Rather than kick me off of my subcommittee, which might have given me, some kind of chops back home, they just dissolved my committee.
So you never did get a subcommittee chair, an MIT grad?
Oh, I had it for 3 months, and then they took it away.
But one of the changes that needs to happen is, instead of leadership saying, this is our person that's going to run this committee, the people that are on the committee say, this is the person that's going to run the committee. And that way there is more interaction and positive interaction between the chair and the committee members, as opposed to the chair and leadership. So this is an organization that is shaped just like a pyramid. You have one person at the top, and then everybody underneath follows what that person wants. And it really needs to be more of a flat organization.
So the first thing they do is crimp your PAC money that comes here in Washington, D.C. They just crimp that hose a little bit to show you what they can do. And then they crimp it all the way. And then they go back home and try to crimp your hose too.
We need to get money out of politics. But I agree, we have
I don't know
First
how you
Amendment.
do.
I know, it's a First Amendment right. But gosh, it's an arms race, isn't it? My race in Eastern Iowa last time, total spent was $8 million. For a job that lasts 24 months. And it's going to be more. Mine will probably be $10 million this time, maybe $12 million. Where does this end?
I was on the floor. In fact, we played a little game, and I think Massey was with us at the time, but I intentionally voted no on the rule, and we set our clocks to see how long it would take the staff to come over and tell us we voted the wrong way. And it got to like 40 seconds because they were dilly-dallying, not because they were, it would typically take them 10 or 11 seconds to get over and say, you voted the wrong way, you've got to change this. But it took them about 40, 45 seconds to do it. But yeah, you can play games and mess with people by voting the wrong way around this place. They have little heart palpitations.
But these are staffers.
These are staffers, and they tell you how to vote.
Term limits, what we need. 82% of the citizens in the country want term limits. People want term limits.
People want them, but the problems I see here are bigger than term limits. I would bet you the average tenure of a committee staffer is longer than that of a congressman.
Oh, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. And those are the ones that write the bills. Not our staff, the committee staff. And I love them. Nothing wrong. I don't want any hate mail from the committee staff.
Staff drives this place. I can tell you stories. I had a friend on the Appropriations Committee, and she was asked to vote on something, and literally it was not in front of her. And so she asked for it and started to walk out the door, and a staffer said, you can't take that with you, the appropriations bill that she was voting on. And she ignored the staffer and took it, and the chairman of the committee came up on the floor and was swearing at her on the floor for not obeying the staffer. It is very much a staff-driven institution.
Well, it's easier to tell you what won't fix DC than it is to tell you what will fix it. There are a lot of people that have ideas like term limits or a constitutional convention where you rewrite the Constitution or amend it, or public financing of campaigns. None of those will fix the problems that I've seen here in Washington. The average congressman has been here 6 years or less. The average member of the House of Representatives barely finishes a full Senate term before they leave Congress. And so people in the House aren't here as long as you think. A lot of them burn out, but not many of them lose their re-election. I think they leave willingly. Unfortunately, the good ones leave.
Attacks in the Politico pieces being
I'm not going to talk about that right now.
lies.
Well, it was, I think I called it half-truths and whole lies. The guy that we let go. I'm not going to get into that either. I'll do it off camera. It's out of respect.
The tragedy is that any person, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, who's known me for any period of time and has any integrity, knows two things. I am a good man, and I'm an alcoholic.
Though as I sort of looked in the mirror and said, what the hell's important to me? I knew what I said was important to me, but what was I doing? And my alcoholism never manifested. I never drank at work, never drunk on the floor. I've never been drunk in the courtroom. I've never been drunk in the Virginia State Senate chamber. But I think, you know, and maybe I could drink 20 times and have no problems, but the 21st, who knows? It was a math game.
This is because life is about priorities and values, and for the most part, I am proud of mine.
Oh, I'm successful. I've never lost an election. I've done this. I've done that. I carried this bill. I passed that bill. That's great. What the hell did I do for my daughter when I missed her soccer game for the second weekend in a row?
Not for fear of losing or for lack of love for our great nation, today I am announcing that I will not seek re-election.
I've failed at lots of stuff, but I've never been a failure. And it's not going to start now. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in 2019. But I'll tell you this, as far as politics, man, we're getting divorced, and I hope she never calls. I love this country, and there are some spectacular women and men in this town. But the system is lasted 6 ways from Sunday, and I got more important stuff to worry about. And I'm proud of 21 days of sobriety.
But it's not the people who've been here the longest that are the problems. It's the people who sell out the quickest that are the problems.
This is the bat that I've threatened to use on my colleagues because I think it's the only way to take out a zombie. Now, my staff have been instructed that if I exhibit any zombie symptoms when I come back to the office after meeting with leadership, to use this bat on me.
Did you know that we've passed 56 opioid bills this Congress? It's because people want to go home this November and campaign and say they're doing something about the opioid crisis. They got a bill passed in Congress with their name at the top. Very few, if any of those bills have passed the Senate. Those are messaging bills, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Oh, I got new glasses too. The thing I want to see most of all is a more inclusive process. Regardless of what the outcome might be, I would like to see bills that are written by the committees that are supposed to be responsible for the bills instead of bills that are written behind closed doors that skip the committee process and come straight to the floor. I'd like to see an amendment process for bills when they get to the floor where all 435 members of Congress can offer amendments as long as they're germane to the legislation, and they get a vote. They see the light of day, a debate. We haven't been doing that. Like, Congress hasn't been voting on consequential things. We've been naming a lot of post offices, but we haven't been voting on a lot of amendments. Under John Boehner, I have to admit, I got at least half a dozen, maybe 10 votes on the floor. Under Paul Ryan, I've gotten 1 vote.
What's up, my man?
Just hanging around.
I can't do anything about it.
How do we do more of that? Because that seemed like
What we
such
have
a
to stop
profound
doing
deal.
is beating each other up who we disagree with on one or two things and start finding commonality. I've said it 1,000 times to you, and that is if I were a member of Congress under President Obama and not President Trump, I'd look at the Venn diagram of agreement, find the 10% overlap, and get to work. For the 3.5 years that I've been here, I've called out the establishment and have in fact voted against my own party when I thought we needed to do that. My first vote, my very first vote as a freshman, was against the sitting Speaker of the House, John Boehner. And I had establishment people come up and put their finger in my chest right after that vote, my first day in the job, and said, Blum, you just signed your death warrant. You will not be back. You don't do that. You got to play by the rules around here. You know, at 61 years old at the time, I didn't come here to, quote, play by the rules. Because most of the people I know in the real world don't really like the rules in the swamp. You think my desk is neat enough? Yeah, well, you know what? We've cleaned that desk up every daggone time these guys have come in to film. Here's what it really looks like. It does feel good from time to time to squeeze the Capitol dome. It makes me feel far more powerful than I ever will be.
I worked on all three efforts to get rid of John Boehner, and I sit here and tell you today he was better than Paul Ryan. That's a hard thing for me to say, but Paul Ryan has shut down the process here like no other speaker in recent history. I gotta show you something. It's on my wall over here. This was the document that ultimately led to John Boehner's early departure, the motion to vacate the Speaker's office. And in it, we were careful to enumerate our grievances with the way this place was being run. These weren't policy issues, these are process issues. And this is what concerns me. For instance, we said that whereas the Speaker has, through inaction, caused the power of Congress to atrophy, thereby making Congress subservient to the executive and judicial branches, diminishing the voice of the American people. That was one of our grievances. Another was, whereas the Speaker uses the power of the office to punish members who vote accordingly to their conscience instead of the will of the Speaker. Whereas the Speaker has intentionally provided for voice votes on consequential and controversial legislation to be taken without notice and with few members present. And it's the process we need to fix here, regardless of what the policy outcome is.
You know, my political philosophy has always been look people in the eyes, tell them what you believe, then be consistent with what you said. Results be damned, because I always thought, and I still believe, that is the best strategy. Tell the freaking truth.
We're told that you got to close this process down to protect us from those evil Democrats who would offer amendments that would really muck up our bill. They would force us to take votes on issues. Even if their legislation didn't prevail, those votes would be politically damaging to us to take. So the Speaker has protected us. Like a patriarch, he's protecting us from those evil Democrats who would make us vote on our principles. The problem is, what they're really doing is they're protecting certain members of the Republican Party from other members of the Republican Party who want to put issues on the floor, who want to take votes to expose the true positions of people in Congress. And so that's what all this shutting the process down has been about. Not protecting Republicans from Democrats, but protecting Republicans from their voters.
If your opinion, your values, and your goals aren't analogous enough with those of the people whom you seek to represent, you shan't represent them, and that's okay.
I actually came here and did what I said I would do. That drives a lot of the establishment, a lot of the career politicians insane. Well, yes, sadly, on both sides of the aisle. But I have never licked my finger and stuck it in the political winds to see which way they're blowing to determine what I'm going to believe in that day. I know what I believe in. I've told the voters what I believe in, and when I've got here, I've followed through. I don't have a problem with Democrats fighting for what they believe in. That's all right too. But let's be principled. Let's have that debate. Let's have that discussion. At the end of the day, I think the best bills take some of our good ideas and some of the other side's good ideas and put them together. And I think any of the big bills out there, whether it's health care or it's anything to do with Social Security or Medicare, the big bills should be bipartisan. The Affordable Care Act, there wasn't a single Republican that signed on to that bill. In the Tax Cuts and Job Act bill, there wasn't a single Democrat that voted for it. We have got to get together here. Neither party has got a corner on fantastic ideas. We've got to get together on these big issues of the day and make them bipartisan.
I mean, transparency is messy. It's hard work. When you open up the amendment process and there are 200 amendments offered and everybody gets 10 minutes of debate. Under John Boehner, we stayed here past midnight some nights actually debating and voting on amendments. All that's gone out the window. I mean, we're going to go home early today. Pat yourself on the back. We've been here 36 hours. Let's call it a week and go home.
I'm sick and tired, candidly, of the not only the willingness, but the gleeful exacerbation and perpetuation of problems in order to score political points. In other words, we have a town full of problems that people could solve but choose not to because it's more useful to score political points off of those problems continuing.